they would require minimal parking. So we were able to eliminate 9 of those uses: the public park, the automobile sales used, automotive repair, marina, forestry, mini warehouse, accessory non-residential building or structure, aerials, mass radios, and television towers, as well as the proposed use of F3 wholesale business, wholesale storage, and warehousing. That left us with 4 uses that are by right in the M2 zoning district, being athletic facility, manufacturing, research and development, and printing. We then looked at those 4 uses to determine if they would meet not only the second provision of the ordinance, but more importantly, the first provision of the ordinance, and that being the specific requirement for parking based on those uses. A research and development use would require 567 off-street parking spaces based on the first provision of the ordinance. So obviously at 142 parking spaces, that use would require a variance and would require the occupant of that use to seek a variance from the board. I would also point out that the likelihood of a research and development center or development use re-tenanting a warehouse / cold storage warehouse is highly unlikely and would more than likely require a full demolition and reconstruction of the building. The next 3 uses, athletic facility, manufacturing, and printing, again, looking at the first provision of the ordinance, athletic facility would require 1 parking space for every 3 persons of total capacity, or at least 1 off-street parking space for every 150 square feet of gross floor area, plus one space for each employee on the largest shift. So if you were to go through the calculations based on 141,598 square feet, you would require 944 parking spaces at a minimum. That does not include the number of employees. I just obviously didn't want to make any assumptions on a facility of that size. I would also point out it's difficult to determine the amount of parking that would be necessary for those type of facilities because there's many different uses which would be included in an athletic facility. For instance, if the building was converted to a racket tennis club, which would be fairly easy for the existing building, they would meet the parking requirements. You would, based on the ITE information, require 139 parking spaces versus the 142 being provided. So it leaves us with the last 2 uses, which are F1 manufacturing and F5 printing. Again, looking at the first provision of the ordinance, the manufacturing use parking requirements are identical to our proposed use, the F3 warehouse use, and therefore the manufacturing use would meet the zoning requirement of the first provision. And then finally, the printing use will require 1 off-street parking space for every 250 square feet of gross floor area, 1 parking space for each employee on the, or 1 parking space for each employee on the largest shift, 1 space for each company vehicle normally stored on premises. Going through the math, it would require 567 plus parking spaces on the facility. Obviously, it wouldn't meet the first provision of the ordinance, and any potential tenant or re-tenanting of that building would require zoning relief with respect to the parking variance.
And these conclusions and analysis, that's all contained in your parking study, which is tab 9 of the exhibit booklet, correct?
That is correct. It's dated October 7th, 2021. It's RE Parking Evaluations, 6201 Bristol Pike, proposed distribution facility.
And in your expert opinion, Matt, is the second requirement of the zoning ordinance requirement of 1 parking space for every 500 square feet of gross floor area unreasonable as it relates to the proposed use and to other permitted uses in the M2?
Yes, that is my opinion.
And in your professional opinion as an expert in transportation engineering, planning, design, and parking, will providing less than 1 parking space for every 500 square feet of gross floor area for the proposed warehouse cold storage use and other permitted uses in the M2 district in any way adversely impact or be detrimental to the health, safety, and welfare of the community.
It is my opinion it will not.
That's all I have of this witness.
Good evening, sir. Andrew Stoll. I'll just ask you a couple questions, a couple follow-up here. Just to clarify, what is the, you said there's going to be one shift for the use?
No. What the ordinance requires is one off-street parking space for each employee on the largest shift. So the largest shift was determined to be approximately 50 employees.
I'm sorry, you said 50,
50, correct.
And there are other shifts being run? How many shifts will there be?
I'm not aware of how many shifts there will be. I'm only aware of that the highest shift is anticipated to be 50 employees.
And do you know the timing of that shift?
I do not know the timing of that shift.
Parking requirement is what the parking requirement is.
I just want to ask my questions, yeah. And who would have the information regarding the highest shift? Would that be the applicant himself?
I would assume so.
Okay. And I think you said the use, or you did a study to find that there's more trucks, more travel, and more demand for this use. Is that correct?
I do not believe that was anything part of my testimony. I believe I spoke to the parking, the number of parking spaces required for this use and the other uses within the M2 district.
And you performed an analysis with respect to this use, correct?
In regards to parking, yes.
Okay. And I want to clarify one thing. Is the site being used as a cold storage facility?
The site, as I analyzed it, was as a warehouse or cold storage warehouse facility.
Okay, so it may be both.
I believe it likely is one of the other. From a traffic engineering perspective, they have no difference whatsoever with respect to the amount of traffic anticipated for a cold storage facility versus a warehouse.
And is there a drive-through proposed on the property?
A drive-through?
Any type of, not like your typical drive-through, but like any type of drive aisle through the building or anything of that nature?
I'm not aware of any drive aisle through the building.
And I think there's 9 truck bays, correct?
There's 9 trailer spaces and 16 loading docks.
Okay. And you'd agree with me that with the applicant's proposing of 142 spaces to the 283 that are required, is about half of what's required, correct?
No, I would disagree. I would agree that the first provision of the ordinance requires that 1 parking space for each employee on the largest shift, plus 1 parking space for every 10 employees, would require 55 parking spaces, whereas 142 are being provided. So the first provision of the ordinance is met, and it's met with a significantly more parking than is necessary. The second provision requires if the building were to be re-tenanted.
Yes. Let me
Yes.
focus on that one if I can.
Sure.
If you'd agree with me that if the interpretation is that the property is being re-tenanted, well, let me ask this. Is it your understanding that the owner is going to be different now than it was before?
I don't know that I understand the question.
You understand that your client's going to be a new owner than was previously owning the property, correct?
It's obvious from the presentation, but let me ask you a question. How do you reconcile these two provisions as the expert?
Typically, in order to reconcile, and I must admit, I have not seen an ordinance like this before where you talk about possible uses in the future because, when I analyze that, I want to look at what it's proposed to be and make sure that what it's proposed to be can be accommodated on that property. So it makes it difficult when you look at the various uses that are allowed by right to say, could this building be re-tenanted as research and development? Could be re-tenanted as a printing facility? And obviously, some of those uses are a lot easier to accommodate, or this property would be more attractive to some of those uses.
So in your opinion, you acknowledge that if some other use, let's say this were granted, 10 years from now, some other application is filed, it's re-tenanted, let's take that term to be true, that that party would have to come back to the zoning board if they didn't meet that requirement.
Well, if they didn't meet the first provision of the ordinance, then yes, absolutely, they would need to come back.
Either provision.
Well, either provision, especially the first provision of the ordinance. So if it was, as I mentioned, if there was an athletic facility, they would have to come in and meet the first criteria before they can even get to the second criteria of the ordinance.
They're both in writing, both in the ordinance.
Correct. The other aspect that we look at is I had mentioned in my testimony, the Institute of Transportation Engineers Parking Manual, and we look at data that's been compiled at other similar type uses to come up with generalized rates, where you look at either the employees or you look at the square footage of the building. And what's interesting is that when you plug in the square footage of the building into the ITE model, it tells you that you require 56 parking spaces, which is virtually identical, again, to the first provision of the ordinance, which says 55 spaces.
Sir, if I can, I just want to refocus to that second part of the ordinance. And you agree with me, the solicitor said, that ordinance is, that provision's there, right? So if that provision applies, you would agree with me that 283 parking spaces are required, correct?
If the building were to be re-tenanted, yes.
Okay. And you would agree with me that on the zoning plan that you submitted as part of this application, it says that 283 spaces are required. Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of what the zoning plan says.
If I could, maybe that would just help clarify things.
The
applicant would agree to a condition, if this is approved, that if there's any other use besides an F3,
I
which
just
is the use we're
object to this.
proposing, that they would agree to a condition that they would have to come back in for a variance.
I'm objecting. I gave counsel my opportunity, her opportunity to question the witness. I just wanted to seem courtesy, that's all. Sarah, I'm showing you the applicant's exhibit, and the applicant's exhibit book, it's Exhibit 6, and you'd agree with me that it's a plan proposed by Bowler Engineering. Do you see that?
I do.
Dated June, I believe it's, oh my eyes are bad. September 8th, 2021, correct?
Correct.
And you see in the bottom right, it says parking requirements. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
And under there, it says 1 space / 500 of gross square footage, 208 spaces required, correct?
I believe above that, though, it says 1 space per employee plus 1 space per company vehicle stored plus 1 space for 10 employees.
And I'm focusing more just on what it says right there. It says the 208 spaces are required, correct?
Correct.
And it says underneath? Okay. You know, I'm just trying to prepare, I'm just trying to move forward with my examination of the witness. I gave her every opportunity, and I'm trying to be courteous here, but I just want to.
But let me just say this, you're a good advocate, I'll commend you. I understand the issue as the solicitor, and my board will understand the issue. I get it, and they're gonna have to make a decision. So repeating it over and over and over again isn't gonna make us any more informed.
Understood.
In the interest of time.
Understood. Thank you. So you'd agree with me that 283 would be 142, is roughly half. We just move on? Okay. Okay. And I believe the proposed parking that you're saying is suitable. That's driven by the applicant's design, correct? I'm sorry, strike that. The parking that you testified to as being suitable, which is proposed on the plan, that's pursuant to the conversations that you have with the applicant, correct?
I don't know that I don't know that I know the question clearly. What I would state is that the plan was prepared by Bowler Engineering, as was shown on Exhibit 6. Based on that plan and their layout of the site and the parking provided, that is the information that was supplied to me to determine whether or not the parking being proposed was sufficient for the use.
We understand that,
Understood.
very much understand. And that's his professional opinion.
Understood. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have nothing further. I would just rest our case and ask that our exhibits be moved into evidence. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, if I can make a suggestion, if you'd like, and like I said, I just got the exhibits from the applicant today. What I can do is, and I understand there's some of the public comment that needs to be provided, we can keep moving forward in another date. I understand there's other applications, but, you know, okay.
We're not opposed to that, I mean, that's your case,
We
I
do,
would like to be able to finish. I finished my case. I don't know how much he has.
I understand, and you may not get a decision tonight. You have one in 24 hours for sure, tomorrow. The board's allowed to take this under advisement per day.
yeah, and we do have one other witness that we'd like to present who is unavailable for tonight. So, it would be a traffic engineer.
And I would object to a traffic engineer testifying because traffic's not an issue. It's
Co-
not relevant.
They just testify, they just put on an hour of testimony from a traffic engineer.
Parking.
Yes,
I'm not sure he said traffic engineer.
I agree with you, that's what it says.
that's what I,
You're focused on the number of parking.
that's correct, yes.
That's the only variance.
It's just gonna be from Mr.,
Due to the project.
yes. That's, we understand that there's land development. We just want a fair opportunity to present our case. We just heard about an hour of testimony from their traffic engineer relating to aspects of this project. That's it.
If the board is inclined to continue this to allow him to present another witness, then, I mean, we should adjourn tonight then.
And well, maybe, also that may allow you, the ability to talk about this, and resolve the differences here. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, it's still hard to understand what the issue is because Mr. Beagle came out to the rezoning and he supported our rezoning.
I'm objecting to this. This is just,
I'll ask him right now, on the record.
I need to I wanna make sure my board has the benefit of what everybody's coming up with.
understood.
Understood.
We appreciate that, sir.
And if we continue this, it'll just give us a little more time to be prepared the next time you come back.
Okay, that's fine. Then we'll bring rebuttal too.
Yeah, you can do that,
That's fine.
you can do that.
That's fine.
I believe there is public comment, though, if they'd like to make it. I would just suggest that after the break.
That's it. Maybe we can hear some of that now so you can hear it? How long how many people want to testify from the audience?
From the audience? No, we're waiting for the next one.
Okay, then that's fine.
Is there anybody from the public that wants to testify by comment?
And that works?
So, I think that works.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Solicitor.
So we're adjourned for this evening?
Would you want to make that motion?
You want me to?
Well, normally it's done before the motion. I can't make our own motion. I can't have the board make their own, sua sponte, make their own motion. I know you don't really want to do that. I can feel your pain, but
If you want me to make the motion.
make it, yeah. We'll tell 5 minutes. Give us 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I picked them up. Thanks.
Who were you saying was outside? Yeah. Oh, hi. Hello. I'm Vicky and then Donna just went out for a second. But you're right at the entryway, right? Yeah, right across the street. Yeah, from the entry, right, yeah, and it backs up to our property.
Oh, so you're
You
with
know,
the Pittsburgh Steelers flag?
Next to him.
Oh, at the corner.
No, the
Oh,
other
one
side.
over,
Yeah,
okay.
one over.
Your girls used to work at the nursing home.
No, it wasn't me. But I think we know somebody in common. Candy Schaefer, you know?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I used to work
Oh, okay.
over at Ryder.
I'm sorry, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Erin. I live in our Let's finish. I live in Thursday.
Yes. I took pictures of that last one we had.
The last two, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
That's
So,
the biggest.
so we've not started on the stormwater yet, but what we promised at, what we presented last is that we are working with the township to improve conditions there. So we know that there is that storm drain that runs through our property. It's been videoed.
But we're trying.
What's that?
The township hasn't done much for years.
No.
So working with them is not as impressive, but.
No, so I mean, actually CJ, who just presented, is our engineer as well. So if you want to stay and listen again, you'll hear him go through,
Which one was CJ?
he's the gentleman standing right now.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
But we have not gotten to that point. But we are willing to work with the township. We don't want to make things worse. That we want to come in as good neighbors. We know there's going to be a development there, so we don't want to come in and make things worse with people around there. We're going to be, this is my name on the job. I work for the company.
I know,
At the
but
same time, I have to take pride in this one as well. So yes, I have challenged him with
It just
really
scares
taking
me
a look
that
at
all
what
that
happened.
concrete is gonna be covering all that land, and I wish I could find the pictures. I just
Listen
think.
here for a second.
Sure, what's up?
We're talking about stormwater management for our, so if you could just switch hats
Yeah,
over to our
it's the
project.
same, it's the same story, we're gonna do a lot of retention, we're gonna be doing basins, full controls on the whole property. Everything we touch, we have to control the runoff from it after I'm done.
Yeah, cause
So
that would go like
I
right
gotta
into our
catch that water,
property.
no, I gotta catch it, I gotta
I mean,
hold it,
that's what it looks
I
like.
gotta let
That's
it
what
soak
I
into
wanna
the
see a
ground.
plan up there
Yeah.
and
That's,
if they come
that's
in.
my house there.
We haven't developed it yet,
Yeah,
but
right.
certainly
Our backyard
it's
is.
part of what we're
Well,
doing.
I hope it's not gonna rush into just throwing your hat up there.
No, I got a lot, years of plans, years.
So like for the,
Well, we have
this berm,
two major storms recently
Yeah.
that were the worst in 25 years living
Oh,
there.
absolutely. Even all, yep. Yep.
this little bird, little
Yep.
spiny balls.
Yeah, so we've done, so I'm a landscape architect by trade actually, so I kind of myself so first about the development, so, absolutely.
Is that the existing one or is that the?
That's what we're hoping to build, actually.
Oh.
Single access with emergency access.
Oh, that's never happened before.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was showing her.
Yeah, so I mean, a couple good things, there will be an HOA that will be responsible for making sure that unit looks nice, all that good stuff. And then they will also be, yeah, so they will also be responsible for stuff down, like they will maintain that, so it won't be one property owner that you're dealing with, you will be, responsible.
Like we want to have somebody come right up to our one line. Right.
We're gonna have buffers in there, so there's a bunch of areas that we have to say, we can't disturb. Go in there and trigger.
Yeah, well, like I said, there's that berm area, so if we want to build on the other side.
What I would like to do is, if we get through this, let's sit down, I would love to sit down with CJ and explain what actually happens out there. I mean,
Is that
that's, I
the
want to be
plan,
responsible
that's
for
the way
this,
you
so.
wanna do it? That's
I
how I
would
know.
work.
There's
Like we're living there,
Absolutely.
for the rest of our lives, where we're at.
Yeah, 100%.
Magnet basin, I work in public works and they, multiple basins.
Just be a hole, we're gonna landscape it.
Right, yeah,
Very
well,
fancy.
they all look that way to begin with.
Yeah.
When they get let go, then it's another story. But,
Unfortunately, I know what you mean, it's pretty responsible to sewer the
okay,
I mean, they're the
that's what I'm
largest.
here to make sure.
Apparently you're not.
Yeah.
Sure, I can send you a quick email from my email,
You know,
this has all
I
of my
need definitely do more research on that.
Yeah, for sure. It goes
Oh, it might not be my phone.
all the way up to the lake. Takes some more, if you know,
Okay, I hate.
all the way up to Silver Lake.
Weaver,
Oh, Silver Lake, well, that's all the way over here.
2012.
Yeah, right. So, yeah.
And there's some inlets on it now, so water just goes into those inlets. I'm gonna stop it from getting in those inlets, so that anybody else that was going in there, I'm not taking out their room, they have room to get in there. I'll hold my water for
It's
a
just
day.
searching my, like,
I'll
you're not
let
gonna
mine
get
out
my
a
ear
little,
or.
let people out, and we'll slowly release it.
Alright, so that'll have my email, shoot me a message back and I
What
will.
is your name?
So you don't have anything to do with the wildlife, I see 16 deer across the street from my house.
Unfortunately, I
Now,
don't.
and they're gonna go, it's supposed to be a protected woods.
All of this will still be protected over here.
But it said self-employed
It's all clear now.
It's more than just the basin, that's the main thing to me.
Okay, awesome.
So we're leaving significant trees around the outside.
Assuming we get
10
tonight,
foot
I would love to
into the
sit down
woods.
with you guys with CJ.
Let me get through
Yes,
tonight
sir.
because I
there's a list of the lease. So the homes, they're twins, so the front side, you'll see that, so if you're opening with twins, you have less impervious because they share a wall. So all designed to try and reduce the amount of impervious we need to use. And that's what they look like, like a covered sun area.
Could be like an HOA.
Yeah, HOA, that'll have to maintain.
I might even be moving into these places. If I get a break.
They have a similar project over at Community Electric Station in Dalton, New Jersey.
Right.
So I think she wants to do these in the two houses.
Oh, that's not bad.
Two-bedroom setup, all first floor living, two-car garage. And yeah, I mean, it's a nice third and nice home. So
Yeah, I'm not here blaming anybody about it, I just want to see the plan.
So the good thing the school district did, said closing all this, we need to develop a 50-job if we're closing the school, you can't put more kids in.
Right now,
Can't have open space.
one
Open space would have been ideal. Yeah, I know.
I'll shoot you both.
So, like, the township consider like all these returns developments, are they gonna bring in more police, like hire more police or?
I don't know, I mean, I would assume certain taxes that would be generated from that, from real estate taxes, that's part of that. I don't know the total of that.
Yeah, because I mean, I get it that
Right.
you want to increase teachers and stuff, but it's still a good service.
No, it's just the one.
And 55 plus doesn't mean they don't know.
It's actually less traffic. Okay.
Yeah, because we're at the one at Bayer, you saw Bayer to pay it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
motorcycles going up and down.
That's great.
One change,
Okay. Well, these are traffic engineers. You have a job. Yeah, I mean, I will shoot you an email if you guys have any questions during it. I mean it, so once we get this tonight, I'm happy to sit down with you guys this evening and really go through this. Like I said, we want to be responsible developing here. I mean, they've opened this up to builders. We have to be the one that's selected for this site, so something is gonna come through, so. Yeah, I'm gonna make sure it's something that, you know, you guys are doing next.
Yeah, and well, we're here representing our neighbors on either side, so Lisa and Dean, yeah, we're here for them too.
Steve.
And that is but it's about being responsible for the,
you were on the
property
news.
and maintaining it.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're right across the street. It affects us hugely. People told us, get out of the house now. It's gonna drive you by the town. Right. I've heard both ways. People drive it up. Yeah. Yeah. I'm hoping it's gonna be good. Especially with the flood. Nate, I appreciate it. Okay.
We would, it's the board's request that you make a request for a continuance, if you're willing to do that. They would prefer not to make a decision this evening. Having said that, don't come back here with 10 witnesses,
Understood.
okay? So, I mean, I think we have expert testimony. I'm just gonna say this, on the first point, on the first portion of the zoning code. And I don't think you could find, unless you find an expert that can't do math or count on their fingers and toes, I don't think that's gonna change. So it's really gonna come down to the second provision,
Are you talking about
whether or not your client has party status. And I can't have you make the request, because I'd have to take his testimony, make that determination. So if you'll do that, it'll be helpful.
I will do that. I will request the continuance this evening.
Thank you.
Can you tell me what the next date is, just to make sure I'm not conflicted?
It will either be next month or the month after, you tell us. Yeah. Actually, December's probably better for me.
December 8th, I am in Lower Moreland Township. I could maybe try to find somebody to go to Lower Moreland for me. December 13th is the other day. Well, I think that they want to move this, you want to move this quickly, Mike? If we could do December 13th, please.
Best of luck. Best of luck. Yeah.
Okay.
I would hate to take someone from my firm.
13th. You guys can come back. Matthew?
Sit back in. Yeah, that's Brian. Brian, that's good to go.
December 13th. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Second.
Call the board. Colleen Dunn,
Yes.
Andy Garala, Mark DeMarcus,
Yes.
Ed Murphy, yes.
Thanks again.
Sorry,
I
Andy.
appreciate
Thank you.
your time
Thank you,
this
everyone.
evening and your
Thank you,
patience.
Joy.
No problem.
Thank you, guys.
All right, next up, D.R. Horton, Inc., 2040 A Briggs Road, Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Parcel 5-059-144.
I do somewhere.
Good evening. Nate Fox from Obermeyer, Redmond, Maxwell, and Hippel on behalf of the applicant, D.R. Horton. We have our notices and letters.
Thank you.
So we are here this evening to talk about the prior Lafayette Elementary School property located at 4201 Fayette Drive, Bristol Township. Currently, it's a vacant property with all the structures being demolished in 2019, with the only things left on the property being paved driveways, parking area, and some remaining foundation spoils from the demolition of the building and some remains of a playground. The property itself is approximately 20.95 contiguous acres located in the R2 residential zoning district. As equitable owner of the property is D.R. Horton, and we are requesting variances this evening to redevelop the property into a use A8, 88-unit age-qualified residential community. An A8 residential community is permitted within the R2 zoning district, and within the A8 residential community, A2 two-family dwelling units are permitted. However, A2 two-family dwelling units within the R2 residential district are not themselves a permitted use. So our first variance, we're asking for an A2 two-family dwelling within the R2 residence district as a belt and suspenders. The A8 is permitted by a conditional use. The second zoning variance we're asking is to permit non-compliance with the individual lot requirements for the respective type of residential use permitted by the zoning district in which the community is located. And again, those non-compliance are driven by the fact that an A2 two-family dwelling is permitted within an A8 age-qualified community, but that necessitates some variance relief to develop twin dwelling units. So following that, the specific dimensional relief we're requesting is to permit a minimum lot area of 4,255 square feet, which is a comfortable size for a twin, as opposed to a 6,500 square foot lot, which would be more conducive to a small lot, single-family home. The next variance we're requesting is to permit a minimum lot width of 37 feet instead of the required 60. Again, 37 foot is an appropriate size for a twin dwelling unit or a two-family dwelling unit, as opposed to 60, which is more applicable to a single-family home. Next, to permit a maximum building area of 49.4 square feet instead of the required 25%. That's to necessitate the roadways, sidewalks, things like that that are necessary for an age-qualified community. We're asking for maximum impervious surface ratio. We had said 40.1%. We're hoping we could ask for 41%, round that up to the next whole percentage to allow, just in case there's something that comes up in land development, or if we have to add some impervious area for some reason we haven't foreseen yet. Next, to permit a single side yard of 7 foot instead of 2 side yards with a minimum aggregate width of 16 feet. Again, because we're developing two-family dwelling units, twins, they would only have 1 side yard and a 0 side yard at the party wall. And finally, to permit a maximum impervious surface ratio of approximately 40.1 instead of the required 35% for the track. We're asking for 41%. Those two variances are duplicative, however, they appear twice. One at section 205-26D and one at 205-107F. As will be presented by our witnesses, the condition of the property is currently poor. It's the remains of a school building, and the redevelopment will be a great improvement to the immediate neighborhood and the township. The variances requested this evening will not alter the essential character of the R2 zoning district, nor would they substantially or permanently impair the appropriate use or development of adjacent properties. And these requested variances represent the minimum relief and represent the least modification possible to the ordinance. A bit about my client, D.R. Horton. D.R. Horton is America's largest home builder, currently operating in 29 states in 90 different markets. And so hopefully this makes the township and the zoning hearing board confident that they're an entity that has the wherewithal and the commitment to make this investment and see the project through as requested. In case anyone has any questions, Erin Lee Witt is the entitlements manager for D.R. Horton, so she's here if there's any specific questions as to D.R. Horton. Just by reference, a similar community is under development by D.R. Horton across the river in Delanco, New Jersey, Delanco Station. Similar small lot, 55 and older community. If there's any questions of me, I'm happy to answer them, but I can go right into witness testimony if that's okay by the board. Great. Your witnesses sworn in one at a time as they give testimony, or should we do both at once? One at a time? Okay. Thank you. First witness, CJ Bach, on for an encore this evening.
Not acceptable this time.
No?
They already know.
I was going to try and save you like 10 minutes.
Run away.
CJ, you mind getting sworn in?
You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
And will the board accept Mr. Bach as an expert in the field of civil engineering? Great. CJ, you're familiar with the property being developed. Can you give the board an overview of what's proposed? You heard my summary. Can you touch on the things I may have missed and help the board understand what's important for our relief requested this evening?
Well, as I think you touched on a lot of the high points of the proposed development, 88 twins, proposed on about 21 acres. I
Sorry, yeah.
21 acres. Just like so you've heard earlier tonight, there are some protected lands on this property as well that we're going to preserve, some woodlands and some wetlands. And again, it handicaps are impervious, and we are requesting relief. We're going to round it up to 41 at this level of the design. I think it's appropriate we round it up, but our calculated raw right now is at 40.1, and the required is 35. So we are looking for some relief on our impervious coverage.
And can I, it's just some general properties, so as far as shape of the property, there's not a, other than the inside corner, there's not a right angle on this property, correct?
Correct. It's very kite-shaped, I'd say.
And between the shape and the natural resources, that limits in part what we can do dimensionally. Is that a fair statement?
It does affect our ability to get density on the property, yes.
And then as far as the use, the A2, use A2 two-family dwelling unit, that by itself is not permitted in the R2 residence district. That's correct, right?
That is correct.
However, it is permitted within an A8 age-qualified development, which is permitted by conditional use. That's correct, right?
That's correct, yes.
So as a precaution, we're asking to confirm that an A2 two-family dwelling unit is permitted here, which would then proceed to a conditional use. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
But then to get the A8 conditional use approved, we still need dimensional relief as enumerated, and you heard me summarize. Is that correct?
Correct. The A2 use is a little different, and for R2, we're going to need some modifications to the standard lot dimension criteria.
But all of those items, be it lot size, lot width, number of side yards and size of side yard and impervious coverage, that's all driven in part one by the shape of this property,
right,
as well as the fact that these are twin homes, and those are the typical dimensions or reasonable dimensions for a twin lot. Is that fair?
That is correct. In addition, there was also a building coverage where the building coverage exceeds the maximum 25%. Again, you're talking about kind of a smaller lot. Changing the diameter is changing our percentages of coverage. So it's a slightly smaller lot. It's a slightly more intense than what single family would be in a single family lot. Same thing with lot width, where your single family lots are traditionally wider at 60 feet, and in this application for twins, 37 feet is pretty conventional and works just fine.
And then with you're familiar with the condition of the property, correct?
Correct.
And the property is pretty flat, is that correct?
It is very flat, yes it is.
And as far as sheet grading and stormwater, talk about what happens there today.
Sure.
Versus how that will be better after or improved after development.
Currently, the site is very flat. Water would run as sheet flow towards there's a pipe that bifurcates the property at about 1/3 of its width coming from the street side. So somewhere around here is a pipeline that traverses the property. And the property is kind of sloped so that it drains slowly back into this pipeline where there are inlets. And so stormwater is uncontrolled, just flows right into these inlets and then right ultimately to Silver Lake. So our proposed system and our plan we're showing, it's not been fully detailed yet, but we're contemplating a series of above-ground basins to intercept stormwater, attenuate it, allow it time to infiltrate, and then also to manage the controlled release of it into this pipeline. So when we retain all our stormwater, we're going to keep it offline from this pipeline, allowing other users to use it, which will alleviate flooding in all sorts of other places in the community.
So even though we're increasing the development on the property as far as impervious coverage, the overall stormwater conditions will be improved because there will be stormwater controls on the property versus what's there today.
Correct. In addition, the density of the development is going to be changed. I mean, when we look at what the school property is now, it's like kind of a centralized big hub of impervious surfaces. And if you look at that in contrast to what we're showing here, you have impervious surfaces that are more isolated. They're more separated with green spaces, and there's going to be more additional opportunity for infiltration. So, I mean, I would expect less runoff from this type of development in a per acre sense. But additionally, as you noted, we'll be providing significant controls that where none exist now.
Sure, and forgive me if I've asked you this before, but There are also some woodlands surrounding the property. Can you talk about what efforts were made to preserve those and make sure those are undisturbed?
Sure, particularly in this corner region, we really looked for opportunities to preserve as much of the woods as we can to try to maintain that buffering that exists between the existing residential properties. Similarly, we look for opportunities in the rears of these homes to, to avoid any of the woods that are actually part of a much bigger woodland system as part of, in Bristol Township. I believe it's Bucks County Parks.
And it's anticipated that other than the dimensional relief we're asking for this evening, we meet all the other criteria of the A8 age-qualified community.
Yes, we do.
Great. So, and then as far as these variances, so these variances represent the minimum variances that afford relief and the least modification possible to the regulations at issue. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And these variances request that they will not alter the essential character of the R2 zoning district or substantially or permanently impair the appropriate use or development of adjacent properties. Is that also correct?
That is correct, yes.
And again, these variances are driven by the fact that the shape and condition of the property, as well as a permitted type of development within the the A8 age-qualified district. Is that also correct?
That's correct, sir, yes.
Great. I have no further questions. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Bach?
Sure.
Never really fully understood this.
Yeah.
I know what a townhome looks like. I know what a townhome looks like. But I've seen proposals for two-building townhomes. What's the difference between this twin and a double townhome?
I have a picture of them. If we can go forward in the presentation.
No, I've seen them. I saw what it is, but I'm just saying it as a technical matter, why are these?
I'm talking about townhomes. I'm normally talking about something probably 4 units or more. They're usually in blocks of 4. Obviously, twins, as the name suggests, it's just 2.
Okay.
But that's traditionally what I would expect to see in a difference. I don't think I've ever. The kind of architecture is probably different in a twin than you're going to get in a townhome, where it's probably more rectangular, and I think the twins can be, have a chance for more interesting architecture.
All right. Thank you.
Sure. And for a two-family, every single unit in the community will be a twin. There's no 3-pack or 4-pack.
No, they're all twins. There are 44 twin buildings for a total of 88 units or lots.
And I missed a formality at the beginning. We'd like to have our entirety of our PowerPoint presentation. We'll call that applicant A1, which includes our plans, list of zoning relief, and also some elevations and floor plans.
Sure.
Thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Bach?
No, you got to proceed.
All right. As another encore this evening, Mr. Matt Hammond, which, if we can, we're trying.
I don't think that's ever happened in like 9 years.
No, and you're even welcome back, I think. So may we just, is Mr. Hammond considered qualified as a traffic expert in the field of traffic engineering?
And parking.
And parking.
Thank you.
All right, Matt, we're calling you to testify this evening solely to make a comparison and explain the difference in use and intensity between the school and this proposed age-qualified community. You prepared a traffic analysis. Can you walk the board through that?
Sure.
Oh, yes, yes.
You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Thank you. So as Mr. Fox had mentioned,
We'll call that Exhibit A2, and I'll provide that.
Okay. Exhibit A2 is essentially what is entitled as Trip Generation Comparison, Proposed Age-Qualified Development dated June 18th, 2021. And similar to my previous appearance in front of this board, we look at the amount of traffic that's generated by various uses, utilizing, when you have the opportunity utilizing existing traffic counts, but when you don't, we again go to the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual, which is, again, a compilation of data that is compiled based on existing uses in operation to give you a sense of what a development or a use may generate in the future. For purposes of this application, we looked at two scenarios. Obviously, the previous use of the property, which was an elementary school, and then the proposed use of the property, which is a age-qualified development consisting of approximately 88 units. When you look at the amount of traffic associated with the elementary school and compare it to the age-qualified development, you will find that the age-qualified development will generate significantly less traffic than would the elementary school. And as a traffic engineer, when we look at traffic, we normally look at the peak hours of traffic. Peak hour consists of the highest amount of traffic in the morning would be the AM peak hour, then the PM peak hour is the highest hour of traffic. Normally, as anyone here on the board would experience, would be normally during the commuter time periods when you're traveling to and from work when you experience the highest amount of traffic on the roadway. So when you look at those peak hours and compare the two, you find that the age-qualified development, depending on the time of day that you compare, would generate anywhere between 56 and 93% less traffic than their previous use of the elementary school. And I think everyone can probably attest to the fact that during the morning and afternoon, there are very concentrated times, parent pickup, drop-off, school buses in and out of the facility. Schools are used at nights. The fields are used for athletic practices. They're used on the weekends. So you're going to have a good amount of traffic throughout the course of a week, but really the bulk of that's going to be through that Monday through Friday time period. And as I'd mentioned, there's a significant reduction in traffic based on the proposed use of 88 age-qualified units.
Sure. And did you walk through a number with the board as to what your analysis said the peak hour would be based on the ITE manual versus what those peak hours would look like with an elementary school?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, in terms of the amount of traffic to be generated, we looked at three specific time periods. One being the average weekday, the amount of traffic that would be generated over the course of a day. We looked at the AM peak hour, which is the one highest hour of traffic between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. on a typical weekday. And then the PM peak hour, which is the highest 1 hour of traffic on a typical weekday between 4 and 6 p.m. The elementary school would generate approximately 748 trips over the course of a day. And what a trip is basically one vehicle entering to drop off their child, that same vehicle exiting. Even though it's one vehicle, it's two trips. They made one trip in, one trip out. So 748 trips equates to about 374 cars a day. During the AM peak hour, it's 265 trips. During the PM peak hour, it's approximately 67 trips. When I look at the PM peak hour, I'm not necessarily looking at the peak of the school. I'm looking at the peak of the roadway traffic, because that's usually where you find more traffic is on the adjacent roadway. Looking at the age-qualified development, it would be 328 trips over the course of a day as compared to 748. In the AM peak hour, it's 18 trips compared to 265. And then in the PM peak hour, it's 23 trips compared to the 67 trips.
So in a general manner, is that a clear reduction in traffic as compared to the prior use as a school?
Absolutely. It's a significant reduction in the amount of traffic that would be entering and exiting the subject property.
Great. I have no further questions for Mr. Hammond, and invite the board if they have any for Mr. Hammond. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So in brief summation, you've heard expert testimony from Mr. Bach to support the granting of our requested variances, and we've offered testimony of Mr. Hammond in a proactive way to alleviate any concern the board or the public may have had about traffic, particularly as what was there previously. This represents an overall reduction. We've met the criteria for granting of the variance relief, and both under the Hertzberg standard for dimensional relief and also under the Liberty's Lofts case for any use variance based on the surrounding community and condition of the property as it is requires relief in order to develop in a reasonable manner. We would ask that the board grant the relief requested and just understand we still have a conditional use application to file for the A8 age qualified development and also land development. So we thank you very much for your time this evening and move for the admission of our exhibits and rest our case unless there's further comment or presentation necessary. Thank you.
Now, being age 25 and over, if that's the case, is there any stipulation as to how many people can reside at the house? Can people come and go as they want?
So 55 and older, it'll be a deed restriction on the property. There is some interplay with federal law and fair housing law as what constitutes a family unit and what the limitations are. There will be a declaration of the community, meaning homeowners association documents. As they're two-bedroom houses, there are some things that can be done as far as whether or not children are permitted or what is associated there. And I can't specifically say that there can be a limitation on what is a family unit and how many people can live there. However, these are two-bedroom homes. There's a limitation on the number of parking and vehicles that can be there. So I can't say with certainty that what that will be. I can tell you what controls will be in place.
I mean, there's two cars in the garage, two cars in a driveway can fit. So, I mean, you never know.
Yeah, no, I understand, and I think
Basically, only one of the deed owners has to be 55 or older.
correct.
That's the requirement, really.
Correct.
Okay.
And it also, would it be a separate gate? Would it get gated community to get in there or not, or just wide open? People can roam through there anytime?
So I think that's open for discussion and something we would consider in land development. I think that's driven by what, it's not a requirement of the A8 age qualified, but I think that might be, if the township would consider, I think that's something D.R. Horton would be
I'm just
interested in.
asking because I figure somebody's going to ask.
Sure.
If you were to build less houses, would you still need these variances?
Perhaps not to the degree of the impervious, but yes, as far as the other dimensional variances. This will be a homeowners association-owned community, which will take care of all of the maintenance. But the A8 age-qualified community, even though it permits the A2 two-family dwelling unit, it doesn't really contemplate the side yard setbacks, the smaller lot size for a twin. And we do need we have an agreement with the school that we need a certain yield, and also the cost of the improvements to put stormwater controls. Substantial fill has to come into the site because it's flat. So there's a financial, it's not the sole reason, but there's also a financial component necessary to get to certain yield. This is about 20 units less than we originally proposed when we met with the staff. So we have come down, but this is what's shown is what's required.
You brought up HOA, so I just wanted to ask, will the community be, just say like street sweeping, snow plowing and stuff be done through the HOA or through the township resources?
We're private roadways, unless we discussed with staff, we'd offer the roadways to dedication, but I think staff said we don't need another roadway to take care of. So that private roadway would mean street sweeping, plowing, all of those types of things that could be covered by the HOA. And also with this number of units, there's more resources to pull from and make sure the HOA is appropriately funded and taken care of so that these things can continue on in perpetuity.
Okay, and who's the,
Oh, I'm sorry.
you introduced her, but I,
Yes, Aaron Lee Witt, Entitlements Manager with D.R. Horton.
so these things that you're saying, which is not really testimony, I mean, are you willing to condition the approval on the HOA maintaining the streets, doing all those things
Yes.
that you said?
Yes,
Yes?
yes, we're willing to accept that as a condition of approval.
Everything you just said that they may do, they will do.
Correct. And Aaron Lee Witt, E-R-I-N, Lee, L-E-A, Witt, W-I-T-T, and Entitlements Manager with D.R. Horton. Thank you.
You adopt what he said as your testimony, correct? Thank you. Yeah, might as well
Yeah.
swear in. Get it on the record.
I know.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? State your name for the record and the mic, please.
Aaron Lee Witt, Entitlements Manager for D.R. Horton. And yes.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Anybody out there want to speak for or against? You have to come up to the mic. And I guess get sworn in again or no?
Jeanette Jones,
Jeanette Jones.
was that it?
Raise your hand, please.
Oh,
Do
yeah.
you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
So help me God. All right, my question goes to one of those two gentlemen. You mentioned about the traffic and how the school was so much, there's so much, there were two entrances in the school. There's an entrance, there's an exit. And it's like basically certain times of the day. I live right across the street, and where that road comes out is, I'm right at that corner. So trying to get out of my driveway, and you got 88 more houses coming out of that driveway, you can't tell me that's not going to affect us.
Well, I think what my testimony was is that the previous use of the property generated significantly more traffic than what we're proposing. The other component of that is if we are successful at this level, then we will proceed through land development with the township. And as part of that, we will likely have to prepare some sort of traffic study that will analyze the proposed access opposite Orchard Way, as well as the roadway network in and surrounding the property. And that's more detailed information than what was presented this evening. That's something that we would do as part of land development and part of any other third-party approvals we may need, if it may be PennDOT. But there will be a more comprehensive traffic study that would be done that would analyze it and determine what issues, if any, there are. And if there are, if we do create any issues on the roadway network, we're compelled to mitigate the impact of the development. We're compelled to fix it. We're compelled to make it work.
Because how familiar are you with this area?
I am familiar. Obviously, I'm not as familiar as you are with the
Because
area.
that road, Fayette Drive, is a breakthrough from Bristol and Levittown. They cut through there all the time, and they don't give a crap about that stop sign. They just zoom, 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 and you got the four-wheelers back there and everything. The bulk of that traffic with the two entrances was in the morning and the afternoon. That was it, and then you got nighttime with elder people trying to get out. You can't see a way to get a traffic light there even?
So I would say that as far as the development is concerned, the bulk of the traffic will be in the morning and the afternoon as well.
You
Very
think?
similar to the school, absolutely, for this type of use, especially for residential use. That's not to say that there won't be vehicles in and out throughout the course of a day or later on in the evening or even on the weekends, obviously. But it'll be very similar where you'll see the bulks occur in the morning and the afternoon. In terms of a traffic light, I don't want to say yes or no. I would tell you that whether or not a traffic light is permitted is an exercise that you must go through with PennDOT.
Yeah.
PennDOT permits and approves all traffic signals in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Municipalities own them, so Bristol Township would own the signal, but PennDOT's the clearinghouse. They're the ones who approve it. And there's certain criteria that you must meet in order to even have PennDOT consider providing a traffic light. But I can tell you that based on previous meetings that we've attended, some comments that we've received from residents and staff previously, that we do.
That I'm looking at.
Try and speak into the microphone, please. You can take it with you.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, there's the basins right there. My house is right here. Now, are these gonna be open water? Is that gonna be like a little lake thing going on?
I don't, it won't be standing water, I don't suspect.
That's what I'm
No.
wondering.
No, they'll likely fill up and be full and have some, like a couple, maybe up to a couple feet of water in them for like a day or two, and then it'll be gone.
There won't be odor or
No,
mosquitoes?
no, there are certain performance standards in the ordinance relative to smoke and sound and noise and odor. That, no, we wouldn't be permitted to do anything like that, no.
Good to know, okay. Those are my two concerns. I waited all these hours. That's okay.
Sorry. Anybody else? Hold on, she's coming up. Hold on one second. She's already, she's coming up.
Steve Jones. What else do you need? I do promise, I swear to
Do you
tell
solemnly
the
swear
truth.
the
Yes,
testimony
yes,
you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So
yes.
help you God.
I don't think we need a traffic light there. I hope not. I don't want a traffic light in the neighborhood, but, yeah, the basins, you know, mosquitoes and all that, that's gotta be taken care of, obviously. And the traffic isn't gonna be in and out like twice a day like school. It's gonna be normal traffic like any other neighborhood, people going in and out any time of the day or night. I just wanna make sure there's not gonna be an answer tonight, yes or no, right? You're gonna have to study this, and that's all I wanna know.
No, the board will vote tonight unless there's some good reason not to.
Oh, okay.
And this is, I'm sorry, this is step one. So we need zoning relief, and after this, we have to go to the planning commission and the council to get conditional use and land development. So we have several more meetings. This is just to get the rights to go to the next step.
To the
to get
variances, right?
that. Yes, these are the variances, so we can proceed through conditional
Okay.
use and land development, which will have to reanalyze that plan through the zoning ordinance again, and subdivision and land development ordinance, and stormwater management ordinance, and any other associated ordinance in Bristol Township. Correct anything that I misstated there?
No, I just remember the word bubbler when it comes to those basins, because
Yeah.
they will accumulate some water.
Yeah.
And there is a mechanism that can be installed. Costs a couple $1,000 per basin, but they can actually bubble the water, keep it clear from algae.
Yeah, I work in a different township, and I know about the basins. They do hold water, obviously, much more in the storms we've had lately than ever before, but there was a
That
ton of
truly-
water.
yeah.
That whole field was full of water twice this summer. Very unusual. In 25 years living there, we've never seen that before, that bad, but, I mean, that was extreme. So hopefully that's addressed. So, I mean, we had a,
That's all part of land development. I mean,
Okay.
Attorney Fox is correct.
Mhm.
The board takes that into consideration in terms of public welfare, but it's really not what we're deciding tonight.
okay. All right, thank you.
Sorry. Vicky Weaver, 4303 Fayette Drive,
V-I-C-K-Y,
IE.
W-E-A-V-E-R.
Correct.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
What was that?
4303 Fayette Drive. So very briefly, I just want to echo the concerns about the traffic going through. Even though it's a residential area, we do have a lot of folks who pretty much ignore the stop signs. We've got the motorcycles going through, four-wheelers, two-wheelers, and certainly if we're introducing an elderly population, we're concerned about their safety as well. It's bad enough for us who live there, who deal with idiots on the road, but now we're introducing a senior population. and something really needs to be done about that. People just blowing through. It's really concerning and getting more concerning as time goes on. We're also concerned about the water, making sure that, you know, it's one thing to say, yeah, we'll take care of it, but these are our homes, and we don't want to be further impacted by drain problems and backups, and including mosquitoes and things of that nature. One of the other things we want to consider going down the road is the impact on our services already for fire, EMS, police. We're introducing an older population. You know, we don't want to be stuck somewhere in the line. We want to make sure that there's enough resources to take care of that population as well as to take care of us. So I think I've addressed my concerns. And privacy, like we don't want to, people driving down the road, they don't want to see the housing units back there. We don't want to see them as residents. You know, that's my backyard. I'd rather look at trees than rather look at townhouses, so. And the townhouses, are they single or double story?
Single story.
Single story, okay. All right, I think that's all my questions for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. As part of the HOA, they would be responsible for maintaining the basins and all that stuff, which is actual rare for us to be able to enforce that.
Sure. So the HOA will indeed be responsible, and one thing that the township will make us sign is a stormwater operations and maintenance agreement, which will cover the basins and any other stormwater controls on the property. And if we don't do it, the township has a blanket easement to go in and do it and charge us. So yeah, that's point well taken.
Another one of those conditions.
Believe it. And
I do have one other question. HOAs are not common in our area here. They're new, you know, newer developments usually have them. Is there oversight for the one that is going to be in place or in place if we vote to go and it does come into fruition on the funds for that? I mean, we've all read, you know, again, because they're not so common here, so will the people moving in be versed on what's expected of them?
Sure.
Is there like a board, someone like a secondary oversight, just to protect the people and their money?
Yep, so Pennsylvania has the Planned Communities Act, which sets forth the process by which a homeowners association or planned community association can be established. And there's a period of time where D.R. Horton will be the declarant, meaning the entity that started the association, and they're responsible to take it through the point of turnover, which can be as set forth in the Planned Community Act or in a more restrictive manner in the HOA documents. Typically what happens, and I imagine we'll hire a private management company who will stay in place and be charged with the oversight of the funds. And that works very well subject to the oversight of a board, which will be made up for a period of time, representatives of the declarant until the turnover period, when it will be elected members by the association members. So there will always be residents and folks in charge. And the other thing a homeowners association has the ability to do, if people aren't paying, they can go to court and lien the properties to get the residents to pay. Hopefully you don't get to that point, but that is unfortunately sometimes a necessary step if folks aren't carrying their obligation.
Thank you. I'm aware of how they work.
I'm sorry, yeah.
No, but I just wanted to like a little clarification because they aren't very common here. And there was one not in Bristol Township, in Middletown Township that went under, and then the township had to take over, and it was just a little bit of a nightmare.
And I anticipate probably a condition of land development will be planned community documents subject to the approval of the township solicitor, and we'd of course agree to that condition at that time, or that's baked in tonight. That would be perfectly fine.
Any other questions? Somebody make a motion?
I'll make a motion for.
I second.
Colleen Dunn,
Yes.
Andy Gorilla,
Yes.
Mark DeMarcus,
No.
Ed Murphy, yes.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
I'll be here for the next one too.
Yeah, excellent. number 9.
I do not have
I'll second.